Hi everyone and welcome back to Rachel's Enchanting Cakes, continuing with the trending cartoon comic styled cake tutorial. What about making one like a princess castle? Now this one may look familiar to you. I decided to turn my watermark into a cake. You are more than welcome to use this design if you want to. I'm going to show you just how easy it is to create this castle effect. If you want your castle to look different, you will easily be able to apply the techniques that I use in this tutorial and create your own version. As always, everything you need to know, from crumb coating, stacking, covering the cake and adding all of the decorations step by step. Thank you all for your amazing support and let's make a start. I started by baking two 6-inch round Victoria sponge cakes. You will find this as a detailed recipe and method available on my channel. You then want to simply level these off. Now the layers are relatively flat anyway, so if you don't want to, you don't have to do this. Using a template on some baking paper, I've simply drawn a circle and an outline that I want to cut away using a ruler. This is just so we get that sliced effect on the actual cake. Once I have done this, I then place this piece of cake on top of the other and just repeat that process. We are now going to fill this and crumb coat it. Today I'm using American buttercream frosting, and you'll also find this available on the channel as a full detailed recipe and method. If you wanted to, you could add buttercream. Once you have added a thick layer, I find it best to then place this directly into the fridge. Allow the buttercream to go hard before we add the next layer of cake. The set buttercream will prevent this cake from bulging at the sides. Use the leftover to simply cover your cake. This is called crumb coating, and it will give the fondant something to stick to until the whole of the cake is covered. To cover with fondant, I'm going to start by covering the slice that we have cut away. I take a rectangular piece of fondant, place it in the centre, and then simply trim off any excess. Repeat this for the other side. Once you have done that, if your cake is roughly 4 inches deep and you are using a 6-inch round, you will need on average about 600 grams of fondant. I roll this in between 5mm spacers and do my best to keep it in a circular shape. I simply drape this over the cake. You want to negotiate all of the pleats. Cut off any excess. My cake has been kept in a fridge. This is how I like to work, so there is a bit of condensation, which is why I use extra icing sugar. And once you are happy with it, just a little tip. Simply place either a food skewer or this is a cake tester directly through the centre. This will allow the air to escape and prevent air bubbles as your cake settles. Now for that cake drip, I used a ready-made pink fondant. I simply roll this out so it's a couple of millimeters thick. I then take the base of the tin that I baked my cake in, place it upside down directly on the fondant, and using a very sharp crafts knife freehand, I simply draw around it like a drip effect. I then simply add this directly to my cake, cutting away any excess and negotiating those drips. For this you can use either edible glue or simply steam the cake first. All you want to do now is start rolling out simple black sausage shapes and applying this directly to the cake, either with edible glue or a steamer. This is what turns your cake into a cartoon styled cake. Just look at that. You literally just want to go around the edges of everything that you have applied and maybe add just a few little extras just to make it look more like it's been drawn. I then cut some blue strips of fondant freehand. I place this around the centre of the cake. You simply want to add a sausage shape to the top and the bottom. And then finally, one very long sausage shape around the base of your cake, and then place this in the fridge. First of all, draw the castle on a piece of paper before adding it to baking parchment. Here I have rolled out 5mm thick piece of black modelling paste and attached a piece of baking paper to it using some Trex vegetable fat. Using a very sharp crafts knife, simply cut around the castle shape. Once you have done this, you then want to support this with cocktail sticks. I add 3 in total. Be careful when pushing these in. Remember, it will be removed from the cake. We're now going to add some extra support to the towers with pieces of spaghetti, which can be left inside sugarwork. You will see the cocktail sticks as soon as this is lifted up off the cake. Now I find leaving the baking paper in place helps prevent damage and movement. Remember, all of this is going to set lovely and hard and stick directly upright. Simply repeat that process for each of the towers. Now you can see how basic these shapes are. These are on another piece of baking paper, and I simply cut out each shape individually, and then I turn my fondant into modelling paste. To do that, add 1 teaspoon of Tylo powder for every 250 grams of fondant. We then do the same process using the Trex vegetable fat and cut around each shape. I'm now going to speed everything up so you can see it all come together. Now this is really just how easy it is to make an edible plaque. I've used this technique for 10 years since I started. You want to stick each element on with some edible glue. Remember, this is still modelling paste that I have made myself. You need to be patient. I leave mine in the oven with the oven light on, because then there is no humidity and it will allow the modelling paste to set rock hard so it stands upright. Once you have done that, you then want to prepare your cake drum. Again, I have left the fondant on there to set. This is my refrigerated cake, which I'm able to handle like this because it has been left in the fridge. The reason I have told you to leave the base to set is because you will prevent damaging the board accidentally. You will also have time to adjust this cake whilst it's on the board if it's not exactly in the centre where you want it. All you need to do now is add the edible plaque. It really is as simple and as easy as that. Now just be patient with the plaques, allow them to set. Make sure you are using modelling paste and have supported them appropriately. And it really is that easy. Thank you all so much for your amazing support. This is to celebrate Rachel's Enchanting Cakes 10th anniversary. Thank you again, everyone, and I'll be back soon with more new, completely free content.